The champagne flute feels cold in my hand, colder than it should be for a celebration this warm. My sister is standing in the center of what used to be our grandmother's living room, laughing at something her fiancé whispered in her ear, and I am trying very hard to look like I belong here. But I don't belong here. Not anymore. Not since I learned, 45 minutes ago, what this house actually cost. My husband finds me near the fireplace, his shoulder pressing quietly against mine, the way it does when he knows something is wrong before I've said a word. He hands me a small plate of appetizers I have no intention of eating and leans down slightly. "You've had the same expression for the last half hour," he says, keeping his voice low. "Talk to me." I look around the room. My parents are circling through clusters of guests, accepting congratulations with the ease of people who have practiced being admired. My mother's hand keeps drifting to the freshly painted window trim, touching it with a kind of quiet ownership that makes my stomach turn. My father is pointing out the crown molding to my sister's fiancé, explaining how he chose it himself, as if the choice had been his to make. It was. I just didn't know that until tonight. "The house," I say quietly. "They paid for the whole thing." My husband goes very still. "Your parents bought them a house? Not just any house." I take a slow breath through my nose. "This house. They sold the family home in Ashfield, the one they've had for 23 years. The one I spent 6 summers helping my father renovate so it would be worth something. They sold it for $780,000 and used everything to buy my sister this place." I watch my mother smile at a neighbor I recognize from childhood, a woman who used to bring us cookies at Christmas. "I found out because their real estate agent is married to someone I work with. She mentioned it at dinner tonight, casually, like I already knew." My husband sets his own plate down on the mantel. "Did you know?" "No," I say. "I did not know." I watch my sister laugh again across the room and I think about the last 18 months. My father calling me in February to say the Ashfield house was going on the market, me offering to buy it myself, or at least buy into it, contribute something to keep it in the family. My father saying they had a plan, that I shouldn't worry, that they were handling things. My mother saying, with that particular softness she uses when she wants to end a conversation, that I had my own life to focus on, that I'd always been so capable, that I didn't need to get involved. I didn't need to get involved. I set my champagne on the mantel next to my husband's plate. "Have you ever watched something fall apart in real time while everyone around you keeps clapping?" I ask. My husband takes my hand. He knows, the way he always knows, not to say anything yet. The drive home is long and mostly silent, the kind of silence that has weight. My husband keeps the radio off, which I appreciate. The city passes outside my window in streaks of yellow and white, and I keep turning a single question over in my mind like a stone I can't put down. When did they decide? Not just this. All of it. We get home just after 10, and I go straight to the hall closet, where I keep the box I have never actually wanted to go through. It is a shoebox, technically, though the original shoebox collapsed years ago, and I replaced it with something sturdier. Inside are things I saved without fully understanding why. A receipt from a Western Union transfer, dated 11 years ago, when I was 21 and my parents called to say the mortgage payment was short and could I help just this once. A printout of a loan agreement I drafted myself because I wanted something in writing, though I never asked them to sign it, because asking them to sign it would have meant admitting we were the kind of family that needed things in writing. A birthday card from my grandfather that says, simply, "You are the one who holds things together." I used to think that was a compliment. I sit on the bedroom floor and go through all of it. My husband lowers himself next to me against the wall, close enough that our arms touch, and he doesn't rush me. Here is what the shoebox contains. Evidence. Not the kind you could present in a court, but the kind that accumulates quietly in the back of a person's chest until they stop being able to stand up straight. The Western Union transfer. $3,000, which was a third of my savings at the time, which they never mentioned again and never repaid. A photo of my sister's college graduation, my parents flanking her in her cap and gown in front of the private university they paid for in full, while I attended the state school across town on a combination of scholarships, loans, and the overnight shift at a logistics company that left me falling asleep in my Tuesday morning lectures for 2 years. A text message thread I'd screenshot without being fully sure why, from 4 years ago, where my father told me they were putting my sister on the family car insurance plan, and asked if I could Venmo them my contribution even though I was no longer on it. I had. Of course I had. "Look at this," I say, handing my husband the screenshot. He reads it without comment, but his jaw tightens in the way that means he is choosing his words carefully. You've been holding all of this, he says finally. I didn't know I was holding it until tonight. That isn't entirely true. I think some part of me knew. Some part of me had been cataloging it for years, filing each instance away in a folder I never intended to open, because opening it would have meant admitting the pattern was real, and not just my interpretation of things. It is easier to believe you are imagining favoritism than to accept that the people who were supposed to see you never quite did. My phone lights up on the floor beside me. My sister's name. I send it to voicemail. 3 minutes later, my mother. I send that one to voicemail too. My husband watches me. They're going to keep calling. I know. What do you want to do? I look at the shoebox. At the Western Union receipt, at the photograph of my sister's graduation and my parents' proud faces, and the particular tilt of my mother's chin that means she is exactly where she wants to be. I want to sleep, I say. And then, I want to figure out how to say what I need to say without becoming someone I don't recognize. He nods. He picks up the shoebox and sets it carefully on the dresser. Then we sleep first. I do not sleep. I lie on my side of the bed and stare at the ceiling and think about a specific Saturday when I was 14 years old. My father had gotten behind on some bills and asked me, in the kitchen, in his low, responsible adult voice, if I could contribute my birthday money toward the electric bill. $200. I said yes. My sister, who was 9, got a bicycle that same week because she'd been asking for one. I remember thinking it was probably a coincidence. I remember deciding, very deliberately, to believe it was a coincidence. I have been deciding to believe things were coincidences for my entire life. The call I've been dreading comes on a Tuesday morning, while I'm walking from the parking garage to my office. My father. I answer because I know that not answering only postpones the version of this conversation where he controls the framing. We should talk about Saturday, he says, which is what he always says when he means, you caused a problem and we need to address it. I agree, I say. A pause. He wasn't expecting that. Your mother is upset. Your sister is upset. You made things uncomfortable at what was supposed to be a celebration. I stop walking and step to the side of the sidewalk, out of the morning foot traffic. I didn't make anything uncomfortable. I found out at my sister's housewarming party, from someone I work with, that you sold the Ashfield house and gave her the entire proceeds. I had no idea. You actively kept me from knowing. We didn't keep you from anything. We made a family decision. I'm part of the family. Natalia. He stops, starts again. You have a good job. You and James have a house. You're stable. Your sister needed a foundation. And there it is. The same sentence with new words. You don't need it. You're capable. You've always figured things out. Dad, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. I need you to really hear me. This isn't about the money. It's about 32 years of being the one who doesn't get asked, who doesn't get told, who finds out last, or not at all. I gave you $3,000 when I was 21. I worked nights to put myself through school while you paid for hers in full. I offered to buy into the Ashfield house, and you told me not to worry about it. And now I'm standing on a street corner finding out you gave $780,000 to my sister, and it didn't occur to anyone to mention it to me. The silence on his end has a different quality now. I hear that you feel overlooked, he says finally, in the tone he uses for difficult employees. I don't feel overlooked, Dad. I was overlooked. Those are different things. He says he'll call me later. He doesn't call me later. My sister calls on Thursday. I answer this time because I'm tired of the vibrating and because I know my sister, and I know that whatever she's been told to say is probably layered over something she actually feels, and I want to reach the thing underneath. Mom says you're making this about money, she says, which tells me immediately that she has been briefed. It isn't about money, I say. Then what is it about? It's about being invisible in my own family. I sit down at my kitchen table. Did you know that I helped pay the mortgage in Ashfield? When I was in college? A long pause. No. Did you know that when I graduated, Mom and Dad gave me a card and a $40 gift card to a restaurant? And that they threw you a party for 80 people at the Riverside Club when you graduated? Another pause. Longer. I didn't know about the party for you. There wasn't one. I can hear her breathing on the other end of the line. I'm not angry at you, I tell her, and I mean it. I want to be clear about that. You didn't ask for any of this. But I need you to understand that what happened Saturday wasn't a surprise from nowhere. It was the latest in a pattern that goes back to when we were children, and I'm done pretending the pattern doesn't exist. She's quiet for a long time. Then, you've been carrying this for a while. My whole life, I say. Yes. Why didn't you ever say anything? I think about the 14-year-old version of myself deciding to believe in coincidences, because saying it out loud made it real. And I think I was afraid that if it was real, I would have to do something about it. The pressure from the extended family begins over the weekend. An aunt calls to remind me that family is everything. A cousin sends a long text about the importance of grace and forgiveness in relationships, which would be more meaningful if she'd ever once called to ask how I was doing. My mother's best friend, a woman I've known since I was 7, leaves a voicemail describing me as difficult and sensitive, which suggests my mother has been sharing her version of events. My husband intercepts most of them. He is exceptionally good at being a wall without being aggressive about it, which is a skill I have always admired and never fully possessed. On Sunday night, my parents appear at our front door without calling ahead. I open the door and look at them standing on our porch, my mother in her weekend coat, my father with the expression he wears when he has prepared remarks. "We need to talk," he says. "You could have called," I say. "You haven't been answering." I open the door wider. My husband appears from the kitchen, wipes his hands on a dish towel, and stands in a way that is not threatening but is also not moving. We sit in the living room, the 4 of us. My mother keeps glancing at the wall behind me, where we have a framed print my husband picked out, as if she is cataloging the ways our home is different from hers. My father folds his hands in his lap. "We understand you're upset," he begins. "I'd like to talk before you explain to me how I feel," I say. He blinks. My mother's lips press together. "I've been going back through things," I tell them. "Not to build a case against you, just to understand what I've been living with. The $3,000 when I was 21. The full tuition you covered for my sister while I worked nights and took out loans. The Ashfield house renovation, where I spent 6 summers of weekends helping you add value to a property you just sold for $750,000. The offer I made to buy and that you dismissed without discussion." I look at my father. "You told me you were handling things. What you were handling was a plan you'd already made that I wasn't part of." My mother's eyes are filling, which is a reflex I've watched her use my entire life. "We have always loved you both." I believe that, I say, and I'm surprised to find that I do. But love doesn't automatically mean fairness, and for a long time, I accepted unfairness, because I told myself it was love. My father is quiet in a way he rarely is. He is a man who fills silences the way water fills a low space, automatically, without thinking. The fact that he is sitting with this one tells me something. "The Ashfield house," he starts, "was worth something partly because of my labor," I say. "I'm not asking to be reimbursed. I'm asking to be acknowledged. I'm asking you to say, out loud, that the choices you made over the years were not equal. That's all. Not blame. Just honesty." My mother looks at my father. Something passes between them that I can't read. "You were always so self-sufficient," my mother says finally, her voice quieter now, stripped of its earlier defensiveness. "From the time you were small, you never seemed to need what your sister needed." "I needed it," I say. "I just stopped asking." My father exhales slowly. He looks at his hands. "We told ourselves we were giving each of you what you needed. Not the same things, but what you needed." He pauses. "I think we convinced ourselves that was fair." "It wasn't," I say. He nods. Once, slowly. "No, I don't think it was. It is not a full apology. It is not the conversation I might have scripted in my head. But it is the first time in my life my father has said something that sounds like admission rather than defense, and something in my chest that I didn't know was braced finally shifts. My husband, from the kitchen doorway, gives me a small look. I give him one back. We don't resolve everything that night. We don't come close. But after my parents leave, my husband makes tea, and we sit on the couch in our living room, and I feel, for the first time in weeks, like I can breathe at full capacity. The following month is the kind of hard work that doesn't look like work from the outside. I start seeing a therapist doctor, Okafor, who has a direct manner I immediately respect and a talent for asking questions that make me realize the answer was already somewhere inside me. I go twice a week for the first month. What I learn in those sessions is that I have spent my entire adult life managing my family's comfort at the expense of my own. That I learned early to make myself small enough to fit into whatever space was left after my sister occupied the center. That I am not, in fact, naturally self-sufficient. I am the product of a child who was told so often that she didn't need things that she eventually believed it. My best friend from college, Carmen, comes to visit the third weekend after everything. She drives 4 hours and shows up with takeout and a very direct expression. We sit on my back porch until midnight, and she says the thing she has been too careful to say for years. I watched your parents do this your whole time in school. I never knew how to bring it up. You could have, I tell her. I know. I'm sorry I didn't. She wraps both hands around her mug. For what it's worth, everyone who actually knows you has always seen what you built without them. You just never let yourself see it. I think about that for a long time after she goes to bed. My sister calls again in the middle of the second month, but this time it's different. No preamble, no relay of what my mother told her to say, just her voice. A little rough, like she's been sitting with something. I've been thinking a lot, she says. Me too, I say. I talked to Mom and Dad. Not on your behalf, they didn't ask me to call. I just talked to them. She pauses. I told them that I didn't want a house built on something unfair, that it's been sitting wrong with me since the housewarming. I don't say anything. I know I can't undo any of it, she continues. But I talked to my fiancé, and we want to set up a payment plan. Pay you back, not the full amount of everything, but something real and consistent, over time. It was his idea, actually. Her voice softened slightly. He said he married into a family and he wanted it to be one worth marrying into. I have to put my hand over my mouth for a moment. You don't have to do that, I say, when I can. I want to, she says. I think I've been letting myself not see things for a long time, because it was easier, and I don't want to be that person anymore. I think about what I said to her on the phone months ago. I'm not angry at you. I meant it then. I mean it more now. Then let's figure out something that works. I say. Yeah, she says. Let's do that. The following spring, my parents come to our house for Easter. It is the first family gathering since everything, and I have been honest with myself about what I am and am not ready for. I am ready for a meal. I am ready for conversation. I am not ready to pretend that nothing changed, and I have told them both, clearly, that I won't. My mother brings flowers from the garden, which she has never done before. My father brings a bottle of wine I know is more expensive than the ones he usually picks, which is his language for effort, and I have decided to accept it as such. After dinner, while my husband and my sister's fiancé are doing dishes with a competitive energy that makes my sister and me laugh for the first time in a year, my mother finds me in the hallway. She has her careful face on, the one that means she has rehearsed something. I know I've relied on your capability your whole life without asking if it cost you anything, she says. The words are precise in the way that means she wrote them down at some point and practiced them in front of a mirror. I appreciate that. The fact that she prepared means the fact that she said them means more, not less. I'm sorry that I confuse strength with not needing. I look at her in the hallway light. She looks older than I have been letting myself notice. Not frail, but human in a way that feels suddenly, quietly important. I know you love me, I say. I do. I know that was always true. I pause. I just needed you to know that love and fairness are both things I needed, not one or the other. She nods. Her eyes are wet, but she doesn't let the tears fall, which is also a kind of change. The version of my mother who used the tears as punctuation in arguments seems to have taken a step back. I don't know how long that lasts. I'm not naive enough to expect permanence from a single season, but it is something. My father appears in the kitchen doorway, looks at the two of us, and gives a small nod that contains an entire unspoken paragraph. After they leave, my husband and I sit on the back porch. It's cool enough that I have a blanket across my lap, and the neighborhood is quiet except for someone a few streets over playing music I can't quite identify. How do you feel? My husband asks. I think about the 14-year-old putting money toward the electric bill, the 21-year-old at the Western Union counter, the woman standing at a housewarming party learning in real time how much she had been left out of. I think about the shoebox on the dresser, which I haven't put away, but haven't needed to open again either. Like I've been holding my breath for a very long time, I say, and I'm not sure yet how to just breathe normally. He takes my hand. But better, I add, genuinely better. What I've learned, over these months, is that the thing I wanted wasn't really the money. It never was. What I wanted was to be counted, to be part of the calculation, to have someone look at me and my life and my contributions and factor them in, not just assume I'd be fine because I always had been. The money was just the most recent and most visible way I hadn't been. My sister and I talk on the phone twice a month now. Not long calls. Not the kind that mean we've resolved everything, because we haven't, and pretending otherwise would be a kind of dishonesty I'm no longer interested in. But real conversations, the kind where she asks about my work and actually listens to the answer. The kind where I ask about her wedding planning and she tells me the parts that are hard, not just the parts she wants photographed. I don't know what our family looks like in 5 years. I have stopped trying to predict it, which is its own kind of freedom. What I know is what I'm building right now. My husband, who has never once made me feel like my needs were inconvenient. My best friend, who drove 4 hours with takeout when I needed her to. My work, which I have poured myself into in the years when my family's attention was pointing somewhere else, and which has become something genuinely worth pointing at. And this, the understanding, which I am still practicing, that the version of me who held everything together while being overlooked was doing something remarkable, that the self-sufficiency I built from necessity became real, even if the circumstances that created it were unfair, that I do not have to thank my parents for the difficulties they created in order to acknowledge that I rose to meet them. What does your family owe you? What do you owe them? And at what point does the answer to both questions change? I think about this more than I used to. I think about it on good days and hard days and ordinary Tuesday mornings when the light comes through the kitchen window at the same angle it always does, and I am standing in my house, in my life, in something I built from the ground up without a blueprint. It is mine. Fully, without asterisk. That, I've finally decided, is enough.